Hi there. Welcome to the Sober Circle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
Naomi L. from Princeton, Kentucky. It's always a pleasure for me to stand at a microphone and tell you about the miracle that happened in my life. And if there's one person in this room tonight that hears something that they can use, then it's been a blessing to you. But it certainly is a blessing to me. I can't talk enough about this program. I can't tell you enough about this program because it literally saved my life. And how I came to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous was because there was one man who got sober and stayed sober in Alcoholics Anonymous and was a big book and who carried the message to my then drinking husband. I had not picked up a drink in an alcoholic fashion myself at that point. But you see, he didn't get my then husband, who died of chronic and acute alcoholism. But I, years later, knew where to go when I couldn't stand it another minute, because that man shared with me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my drinking. I don't need to tell you very much because you know I'm a drunk, or I wouldn't be up here. And I didn't become an alcoholic till I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wouldn't really think I was a drunk because, you see, I drank mostly beer. Except when I ran out. And then I would drink anything that had alcohol in it, just like the rest of you people would. But I prided myself on the fact of how much I could drink. And I used to love it when I would take the big drunks home. I thought it was absolutely wonderful when I could drink those big old boys under the table. But you know, at the end of my drinking, I didn't want anybody to know how much I drank. I didn't even want me to know how much I drank. So things change. You know, if I open this book and I read the doctor's opinion to you, I will tell you about my alcoholism. It says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect that alcohol produces. I love the effect that alcohol produced in my life. I'm going to tell you about the first drunk I ever had. I joined the United States Marine Corps when I was 18 years old. I didn't intend to join the Marines. Now, you see, this is the story of my life. Now, this will tell you who I am. When I graduated from high school, I was going to go to college, but my father did not have the money to send me to college, and I immediately got myself kicked out of college with scholarship because you got rules in college, and I wouldn't follow them. And so I was asked to leave. So the next thing that I could do was to go into the service. Because I remember when I was a senior in high school that the recruiters all came and they talked to us. And so my big idea then was that I begged, pleaded, and did everything I could to coerce my father into letting me join the service. And so I had written, and the Army recruiter had sent me all of the necessary papers and funds to get to Oklahoma City to join the Army. And that morning when I went to the post office to join the Army recruiter was busy. So, being nosy like I am, I decided to go on a little adventure, and I was walking around the post office. And there happened to be a Marine recruiter there. She happened to be a woman Marine, and she had on dress blue. And on the corner of her desk lay her hat. And I went in to visit a minute, and I said, "May I please try on your hat?" And she said, "Yes." And I tried it on, and well, I want you to know, automatically I knew that I was going to be the best-looking Marine that ever lived. And I said, "Can I join the Marine Corps?" And she said, "You have to have your parents' permission." And I said, "I got it." And by the time the Army recruiter found me, I was a United States Marine. Now, I want you to know that I have lived to regret that decision. Because the Marine Corps is just like every place else I have ever been in my life. They expect you to mind. And they need Al-Anon, because when you don't do what they tell you, they go crazy. And I guarantee you, I know what EPD is. That's extra punishment duty. But one of the things that was wonderful about it was that it was a freeing thing for me. And that was where I had my first drunk. And my first drunk was essentially like my last drunk. Now, I was 18 at the time, and in California at that time, you had to be 21 to be in bars. And I knew absolutely nothing about that kind of drinking anyway, because I was raised in northwest Oklahoma, and they don't drink mixed drinks in that part of the country. And And, of course, in high school, I didn't drink, and I didn't hang around with kids that drank, except some of the old boys I went out with drank. Now, that was a different time. You young people don't understand that, but there were some real stringent rules about growing up. There was girls who did and girls who didn't. And, and I mean, it was a real double standard time. And girls that did and drank were bad, and you weren't going to get a good husband. And there's just all kinds of things. You got pregnant besides and all that stuff. So, we just kind of lived a different life. So I was a relatively naive young woman when I went into the service, and when I got stationed there, I started hanging around with kids my own age, and most of them didn't drink. But I started dating a man who was older than I was, and who was an officer. I was enlisted. And we went to a party, and it was Christmas Eve in 1955. And when we got there, he asked me if he could fix me a drink. Well, I don't know. Like I said, in part of Oklahoma I'm from, they don't drink mixed drinks. And I didn't even know what to ask for. But he made me a Tom Collins. And I drank it. And it was wonderful. But the feelings that I had, you see, that's how I can talk to you. And I know that anybody in this room can understand feelings. We didn't all drink the same places, and we didn't all do the same things. But if you'll tell me how you felt, I can identify with you. Wino Joe told us that from Tyler, Texas, a long, long time ago, told us, if you tell me how an alcoholic feels, I can identify with you. If you'll open up your heart and you share with me. So how I was feeling was inadequate and insecure. I was young. I was much younger than everybody else at the party. I was enlisted. They were all officers, and I felt very inadequate to be there. And I remember feeling that way, or out of place, insecure, not as good. So they gave me I had the Tom Collins, and it was good. I kind of liked how it made me feel, kind of warm and fuzzy and all that stuff, So I asked for the second one, and he fixed me a second one. Now, I really liked how that one made me feel. And I'm already beginning to find my place. You see, I don't know why you all drink, but I drank to get in my place. And that's just about that much above, average. I just want to get up there where it feels good all the time. The music's better. Everybody's prettier. It's just more fun. I mean, if you laugh, it's a better laughter. That's why I drank, because alcohol put me there initially. And that was where alcohol, that second drink, was doing for me. By the third drink, and so I asked him for the third Tom Collins, and he said, whoa. He said, it's got alcohol in it. You're not used to drinking. It'll make you sick. Here comes who I am. I said, if you don't fix me one, I'll find me somebody who will. And I did. And I had the third one. Now, these people are not good enough to be in the same room with me. And them women ain't near as pretty as they were when I walked through the door. In fact, some of them kind of, And I know by now I'm the prettiest thing in shoes, And the guys all got better looking, too. And it didn't make a heck of a lot of difference to me if they were with somebody. By the fourth one, I am just out of control. By the fifth one, I'm in the car throwing up saying, stop the car, stop the car. I'm now, sophistication has gone out the window. I am now puking drunk. I spent all the next day in bed with the dry heat, swearing never, ever again to drink gin. And I want you to know, from that day to this one, I have not drank a drop of gin. I cannot be around anybody who's drinking gin because it makes my stomach roll and my mouth water, and I begin to feel that old feeling. So I took some wisdom from that. I didn't drink for a long time. But you see, when I was in the Marine Corps, I met this man who was the perfect man. My father probably was an alcoholic. I don't know that. I know that there's alcoholism in our family. It is rampant in our family. I remember early on that when my father smelled funny, I stayed away from him. And there's some incidents I remember as a very young child that were cosmetic about alcohol. So I knew that I was never going to grow up and marry a man that drank. And I had seen the end result of people drinking. So I was not going to marry a man that drank. So I met this man who was absolutely wonderful. He didn't drink. He went to church every day. He didn't, and he was crazy about me. And and he was an officer. I know how to get power, prestige, and money. You marry it. That's how you get it when you don't have it. And so I knew that. So he was going to be my ticket to life.
And we got married. We had been married about 6 months, and one night we were going to have some other people over for dinner, and he said, I'm going to fix a picture of martinis. And I said, why? We don't drink. He said, they might want one. Now, this was totally baffling to a young woman who did not understand what was happening. He never drew another sober breath till the day I divorced him. You see, what I had done, my picker is absolutely perfect. I had picked an alcoholic who was not drinking in order to prove he did not have a drinking problem. He had been called on the carpet about his drinking. The service had told him, if you don't straighten up, you're out of here, and he was a career officer. So he did what we do. He went on a drive. And that was mystifying to me. I could not understand what happened. And not only that, he really hurt my feelings. Because one of the things that happened while I was in the United States Marine Corps was I was nominated Miss First Marine Division in a beauty contest. And I know by now I'm pretty sing shoe leather. And he left me for another woman. She was 33. She was old. And she was ugly. But you see, she had one thing I didn't have. She was the general secretary, and he went to senior candidates officer school, and he as a reserve officer, which is unheard of. But you see, I didn't understand all that. And years later, I was doing a four-step, and I was explaining to my sponsor about how this man broke my heart, and she started laughing, and she said, he didn't break your heart, but he sure as hell bent your pride. So from there, you know, so I out of that marriage immediately. Now, I mean, you know, I haven't learned a thing in, and I met my second husband, who was a practicing alcoholic, and he was Clark Gable and John Wayne, and all of them rolled into one. He was a used car dealer, bought a pinky ring, drove Cadillac, and I want you to know I felt like a ton of bricks. And I thought, oh man, this is my future. And under my tutelage, he will not fail. I'll have him sober. I had him joining the church. I had him going to church, and he tried. God bless that man. He tried everywhere in the world to be what I wanted him to be. But you see, he was who he was. He's an alcoholic. And alcoholics can't be anything for anybody. Myself or any other alcoholic cannot change the way we are to please someone else. And he tried. God love him. He tried. And we went through, I left that man 26 times. And went back. I'm not talking about next door. I'm talking about all the way across the United States. And but during that marriage, the careful with it. If you can't lick them, join them. Now I know that many of the ladies here who are Alanites have made that same choice, but they just ain't got what it takes to hang in there and drink till they die. Quit. After a few mornings throwing up and you know and all that stuff, you know, if you put too much alcohol in a non-alcoholic, they get crazy and act crazy and they get sick and they do all them things. They just won't hop their overcoat in the middle of the winter to do it, you know. So you know, and so I stayed. Now we got two drunks in this family. I mean the pace really picked up by then, and we did insane things like, you know, we decided that we both had a drinking problem, but we were going to handle it. And we weren't going to drink on each other's day, you know. If it was Tuesday, it was his day to drink, and I wasn't going to drink. Well, you know, by God, he'd forget and drink on my day. And now we got two drunks. It was just wild and insane. And, you know, I was in therapy, he was in therapy, we were going to see therapists and all kinds of things, and you know that therapist never one time said, do you all think that alcohol might be a problem in your household? Well, and the other thing that was happening is that old Paul was much further into his alcoholism than I was. So he had ceased to be a fun drinking partner. I wasn't quite there yet. So I decided that I needed to get out of it. You know, I needed to get out of this marriage because, you know, he'd get us thrown out of restaurants and, you know, all kinds of things. And I wasn't there yet. You know, I was looking for somebody to drink with. So I took a job in Vegas, and I used to talk about how my social drinking I did out in Vegas. And I'm going to tell you about a typical weekend for me in Vegas, and then I'm going to get out of this alcohol business and get into recovery. But I'd get up on Saturday morning, and I'd have a case of Coors cool down, and I'd go out and sit by the swimming pool. And I'd sit out there in that sun, and I'd just have a wonderful time. And then I'd go in about 6 o'clock, and I'd put on my long white dress and my mink stole, and I'd get ready to go out to dinner show, which I'd drink some more. And then we'd go to the midnight show. And then we'd go catch the 2 Counts Lounge show. And then I would hit the dunes for the champagne breakfast. And then at about 9 o'clock, I'd roll in home, and I'd take my boxer dog and put him on a leash, open a can of beer, and take him for a walk in the desert. Now, that's what I call social drinking. But there came a time when I no longer did that, because, you see, I gave up my right to drink every day, to drink when I had to. See, I don't know about any of you alcoholics, but I'm powerless over alcohol. I was powerless over alcohol long before I got here. I drank against my will so damn many times it'd make your head spin. Because I'd say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it today. And if I do it, I'm not going to do the things I did yesterday. And I did. And then you get in here and people try to tell me that they've learned enough that they're not going to pick up another drink. I can't learn enough not to pick up another drink. If I'm going to depend on learning and Naomi's willpower, I'm going to be drunk by noon tomorrow. It ain't going to work for me. You know, you people convince me that. I've seen too many of you come out the door and tell me how much you've learned about how you know you're not going to drink again. I don't know I'm not going to drink again, but I don't plan on it. Because I plan on doing what I'm doing this weekend. And I plan on doing what I did yesterday and what I did the day before that. I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to invite that higher power of my understanding into my life and to remove from me the bondage of self so that I can better serve His will and so I can be here and so I can stay sober one day at a time. And then I don't go places that are slippery. You know, I don't have anything to prove anymore. Alcohol whipped the hell out of me. Every time I mess with it, it's going to whip me. And every time I let my alcoholic mind take me places I don't need to go, it'll whip me. Because my thinking is not one damn bit better today than it was the first day I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. But my behavior is a lot better. But you see, it says in this book that I have a strange mental quirk. Cracks me up when they talk about alcoholics in total self-honesty. I don't know one of us that can do it. You know, between me and self-honesty is rationalization and justification and all those other human things. You know, I can't be totally self-honest with me. I'll lie to me every damn time. That's why I got to have a sponsor who says, "What did you say? What are you doing? What are you thinking?" You know. I got to have those things. But anyway, so that marriage ended, and I found me a benefactor. Because, you see, my alcoholism has gotten worse. And I no longer am employable. And I find this poor, unsuspecting soul who wanted to take care of me. He was in Al-Anon. And I decided to let him. I drank a year and a half in that marriage. And I don't say this with jest, but I've made that man's life one miserable damn day in school, I want you to know, because he had no idea what was going on. And he would say dumb things to me like, "Why don't you drink like I drink?" And I'd think, who in the hell wants to drink like you drink? You don't even know how to drink. 2 drinks and you quit. Or he would, and I know that every alcoholic in this room has done it. If you had a spouse, or you had a mother, or you had anybody in your life who was trying to control your drinking. For some reason, I was a binge drinker, and I'd go along for a period of time, and I wouldn't drink. And on Tuesday afternoon, or Wednesday afternoon, or Thursday afternoon, whatever afternoon it was, about 2 o'clock, I'd decide I had been good long enough. And I would celebrate by having a couple of beers. Well, by the time my husband walked in the door, I am schnockered. And he asked me the dumbest question in the world. He'd say, "Why are you drinking today?" Now, I can't tell him. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. But do you think I'm going to tell him that? I said, swear back, and I say, "Well, if you was married to an SOB like you, you'd drink too." Now he's mad. And so we get into it. Now I'm justified. He hurt my feelings, and I can just go right on with my drunk, and it's his fault. And I set him up that way time and time and time again, just like that old Paul used to set me up the same way. But you see, I didn't know any of that then. I'm not here yet. I don't know about Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew about it, but I didn't know about it for me. Well, one day I had all that fun I could say. And that was Memorial Day weekend in 1977. And my sobriety date is May the 29th, 1977. And when I woke up that Tuesday morning, I was one sick girl, and it was just like I always was. I was throwing up with the dry heaves and laying on the bathroom floor with my head on that cold tile, and I said, oh, God, if you'd just let me get better, I'll do something about my drinking. And I don't know that I had any conscious thought about calling Alcoholics Anonymous, but I did. And I was so out of it that in Nashville, Tennessee, which was where I was living at the time, there was meetings, even back then, all over the place. But I didn't have enough sense to tell them what part of town I lived in or anything like that. Come find out there was a meeting about 3 blocks from my house. But we drove on, and so I found that the meeting was at 8 o'clock, and I was going to go. But about 4 o'clock, I started taking a shower and, getting dressed. And Andrew came home, and he was very mad. Oh, God, was he mad. He had a horrible weekend. And he asked me where I was going. I assumed he thought I was going to go out and drink again. And I said, I'm going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Will you go with me? I'm eternally grateful to that man because he said yes. If he had said no, I probably wouldn't have made it. I don't know what would have happened, but he said yes, and by now I'm in trouble because you see, I've already admitted I got a problem. Now that man had no idea that I had a problem, but I've already admitted I have a problem, and I can't figure out how to get out of it. And I remember some of the crazy thoughts that was going through my head, and one of the thoughts that was going through my head was, oh hell. Now I'm going to have to do something about my drinking, and I don't know what to do, and it's just going to be awful, but I can't stand it. I cannot stand the pain of how I am living anymore. And I'm never going to have any fun again. This is it. Now, I hadn't had fun drinking in a long time. My fun drinking is I had retreated to my living room. It had become my source. I let the air out of my own tires so I wouldn't have to drive my car. I couldn't go to the mailbox to get the mail because I don't know what was in there. I was that paranoid. I could not do that. Emotionally, I was a wreck. And if I got Andrew to take me to the grocery store, I couldn't decide whether I was going to buy a pot roast or a hamburger. I couldn't make up my mind about anything. I was just a human. I was an emotional hemorrhage. I was a wreck. He went with me that night, and I'm eternally grateful. And when I walked in that meeting at Woodmont in Nashville, Tennessee, there was a lady named Loretta B. who grabbed a hold of me. Now, what I thought she said and what she said was two different things. Now, what I thought she said was, you don't have to drink anymore if you don't want to. What Loretta said to me was, you don't have to drink anymore if you don't want to, provided you are willing to do a few simple things. And that group opened up that meeting that night and let Andrew sit in the meeting with me, and thank God they did. And the next Tuesday night I went back. And Loretta was standing at the door where she always stands, and she grabbed a hold of me and she said, where have you been? And I said, it's Tuesday night and I'm here. She said, did you drink? Now here comes the alcoholic. I'm insulted to think that she thought I drank. And I said, of course I didn't drink. And she said, well, you don't think you're going to stay sober going to one meeting a week, do you? And I said, well, don't do this. How many meetings do you think I ought to go to? Y'all know it. So she says to me, well, do you have a car? Yeah, I got a car. I don't tell her I hadn't driven it for 6 months because I was so paranoid I couldn't drive. And she said, well, now there's a meeting. You know where Connie, blah, 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 and I said, yeah, I know where that is. And she said, I'll see you there tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Well, I'm not about to tell this perfect stranger the mess I'm in. You know, we do have our pride. So I left the house about 2 hours early, and I'm driving like this, and I finally get there. Well, the next day she says, you know where so-and-so is? You know where so-and-so is? And this just went on. Well, in Nashville, Tennessee at that time, they told you if you didn't have a sponsor, they appointed you one. Well, I've never wanted anybody to appoint anything for me, so I decided I'd look around and I'd find me a society sponsor because that's what I deserve. And there was a lady there that was from the Belmont section, and she dressed well and she spoke well, and she just looked absolutely wonderful. And I thought, now that's what I need for a sponsor. So I asked her. Well, unfortunately, she did not stay sober. And she was coming back from a slip, but I didn't know that. And there was a lady named Margaret, my darling Margaret. And I never officially asked that woman to be her sponsor. She just appointed herself to me. And thank God she did. And every time I turned around, there was Margaret. And she and I began to go to meetings together, and we began to do things. And I thought, the woman is a damn religious fanatic. No matter what I want to talk about, she wants to talk about the spiritual side of the program. And I said, I don't like the spiritual side of the program. And she said, well, there is no other side, honey. And so she asked me if I believed in God, and I said, no. Well, now, I say that with my fingers crossed, because, you see, one of the problems with me is that I really did believe in God, and I believed He was really going to get me. But you know how we are. We whistle through the graveyard. We don't want anybody. We don't want anybody to catch us doing anything decent like believing in God. Not when we're out there. We got to prove to everybody how tough we are and independent. And she said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to loan you my higher power. And all I want you to do, because you don't know how to do anything else, is I want you to get up in the morning and I want you to say, who's ever helping Margaret to stay sober, please help me to stay sober today. I said, I'd feel like a damn fool. And she said, that shouldn't bother you. And I don't want you to say anything else because you don't have anything else to say. And when you go to bed, if you stay sober that day, you just say, thanks who's ever helping Margaret for this day of sobriety. Well, there was one thing that I absolutely did not want, and that was any more. Now, I know that some people come here too soon, but I was just right on time. I had all that pain I could stand. I did not want any more. And I knew one thing about the disease we call alcoholism, because I had watched a precious and darling man go from a man that I thought walked the earth like a god to become a monster as the end result of alcoholism. And I knew I had what he had. And I knew that the only thing that was really going to happen was that it was going to get worse. That I knew. Because I had that much self-honesty to see where I was. I had as my sponsor Jenny said, I had a moment of lucidity. A God-given moment of lucidity. When I saw myself exactly as I was. Hopeless and pitiful. Completely naked. In my dilemma. Which is what this book says we have to be. And I was there. And the people were there to catch me when I fell, because this program is infallible. So eventually I came to believe there was a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. And years later I was talking about my sponsor Margaret and how she had loaned me her higher power and her concept of a higher power, and somebody asked me what that concept was. And I stood there and I did the fish. You know the fish, when you think and the words don't come. I realized I had absolutely no idea what Margaret believed. I only knew she believed, and that it worked. I cannot tell you what she absolutely believed as far as who her higher power was. I just knew she had one, and it worked in her life. And that was enough. Well, when I've been sober for a while, see, I'm used to being the baby. I love being the baby of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, there comes a time when they start pushing you out of the nest. And there was a lady named Maxine in our group, and I did not like Maxine. There was nothing about Maxine that I liked. And Margaret, and I was always used to picking up Margaret because she didn't drive at night, and she called me that afternoon and she said, go pick up Maxine for the meeting tonight. And I said, I don't like Maxine. She said, that has nothing to do with it. You got a car? She doesn't. Go get her. And I said, well, I always pick you up. She said, I have another ride. Go pick up Maxine. Well, I picked up Maxine because I knew her, with a great big resentment. And you know, Maxine taught me one thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no waste, absolutely no waste in God's economy. And what Maxine taught me was that there are people who come to this program and who hang on by their fingernails. And sobriety becomes so painful and they want so badly not to drink, they commit suicide. And 2 days after I picked her up for that meeting, she hung herself, sober. Now that tells me something. I've had a lot of graphic lessons in my recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I moved, and my husband and I moved to Boonville, Indiana, and I was used to going to as many meetings as I wanted to. They got one meeting, Boonville, Indiana, and there's 3 of us. 2 guys and myself. Those guys shellacked me so damn good it wasn't funny. They made me chairman. They made me go with that. They let me open the bank account, you know, in this little town. Don't worry about Anonymous. The crazy little woman that lives in the greenhouse is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. She opened up a bank account today. You know, don't have to worry about that no more. That problem's solved. But I thought Jack, Boonville Jack, who had 8 months more than I, should have been my sponsor. He's a nice guy, nice, good-looking boy. And I thought, well, now he ought to make me a wonderful sponsor. Well, see, he was sponsored well. And he said, no, you go to St. Mary's on Wednesday night and you look up a gray-haired lady named Jenny. And I went. And I want you to know that was one ride. And I pray God that every person in this room has the benefit of someone as wonderful as Jenny. Because that woman absolutely took no crap whatsoever off me. I had been sober about 1.5 years, and I decided one day in the middle of the afternoon I needed a divorce. So we don't ever do that, And so, because he no longer appreciates the fact that I'm sober. And he's beginning to give me some crap about all them meetings I'm going to, and I ought to stay home and do this, and that, and all them crazy people I hang around with, the phone ringing in the middle of the night, and he's tired of all this, and besides that, I've learned enough, I should just stay home, and he'll take care of me, and I won't have to drink anymore. Because he knows lots of alcoholics who found out they were alcoholic, and they just stopped drinking, and they lived happy, normal lives. And my sponsor had taught me to look him in the eye and say, name one. I don't know any. He couldn't know any either, But you see, the thing of it is, she taught me well. So in the middle of the afternoon, I decided I needed a divorce, and there's snowing outside, and I called her, and she said, well, meet me at Jerry's. And I got over there, and I'm going on about he. We women sing the Jackass Serenity. It's called he. And you guys go she. So I'm doing the he serenade, and she listened to me for a little while, and Jenny does not suffer stupidity very long. And she said, now listen here. Now when she said, now listen here, I knew to listen. And she said, we're not here to roast your husband on the prior of your alcoholism. There's a little old gal who did a lot of drinking and a lot of crazy stuff, and we need to find out who she is and she says, and we are not going to contaminate the world, we're going to contain the sickness. You leave him, you'll go get another one just like him, so we're going to leave it alone. Ain't nobody killed anybody at your house. And you're going to learn how to live with this man before you go kill another one. And there's some steps in this program, and we're going to work it. Well, when I was 5 years sober, by this time we moved again, because Andrew had a habit. Andrew's bottle was moving. He was an Al-Anon, but he couldn't get along with people, and we moved a lot. He was an art director, and there was always another job. So we moved a lot. And I'm really glad, because I know drunks all over the United States now. And I found out one other thing, Alcoholics Anonymous is portable. This program is the same no matter where you go. The higher power is the same, the steps are the same, and all you got to do is show up and say, help me. And they're all going to be there. So anyway, when I was 5 years sober, I decided that I needed a divorce. So I came to spend a week in Evansville, Indiana with my sponsor, Judy. And she said, you're just crazy as hell. And I said, I know it. That's why I'm here. Well, she made me so mad I did that thing that we are so hesitant to do. I got out the paper, the pencil, and I wrote down who I resented them. And the only person that was on my resentment list was that husband. And I had a litany against him, the likes of which you've never seen. It was this long. And the next morning I took it and I laid it on the breakfast table in front of Jenny, and she looked at it and she said, oh, my, we do have a self-esteem problem, don't we? I always got ticked on Jenny because it was always we. It was the we, and it was always me doing the doing and her doing the telling. But that's the way it works. And so she said, I think you need to go see a psychiatrist or marriage counselor or something. And I said, no, Jenny. It's the only time in all the years that Jenny Rose has been my sponsor that I've ever said no. Because you see, when I saw me on that piece of paper, I knew exactly the exact nature of my wrong. And the exact nature of my wrong is that I'm a spoiled brat who didn't know how to grow up. And that's what I said. I said, no, Jenny, I don't need a psychiatrist. I need to grow up. I need to learn how to be a woman. I need to learn how to be a sister and a daughter. And I need to learn how to be a wife. And I need to learn how to be a servant in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I need to learn what gratitude really means. And I have not the foggiest idea how to do that. But I do believe that God knows how. And I'm going to go back to Wisconsin, and I know He will put the people and the places and the things in my life that will allow me to become what He wants me to be. Now, and that was exactly what happened. And when I was 9 years sober, I got a divorce. And I got a divorce for exactly the right reason. Not because he left his socks on the floor, he didn't fulfill me, or he didn't do any of those things. I got it because I did not belong there. And by staying in that marriage, I was cheating him and I was cheating me. Because that man had the right for somebody to love him and cherish him and like he needed to be. And I knew I never could. And I had the right to get on with my life and perhaps find some happiness. And you see, at that time in my life, I had gone back to school. I got my real estate license. I had decided that I was not good at relationships and that I had found my niche in life. And my niche in life was to sell real estate. I was going back to Nashville, Tennessee, which is a place I absolutely love, and I was going to sell real estate. And I was going to run with all of you beautiful women. And I was sponsoring a lot of women. I had women friends, and there was not going to be anything else. Well, you know, about the time you think you got your life straightened out, God has other plans. And I went to a convention in Evansville, Indiana, and I saw the best-looking devil of a man I ever saw in my life. And I said, oh, my. And I met my darling Harry Joe. And we were married in 1987. Joe died, and I will cry. Joe died in November of 98. And we had the most wonderful life. We had an AA household. Joe was relatively young in the program when I met him. Some people say I robbed the cradle. He actually had a year and a half. And I had the opportunity to watch him grow up in the program, and we had a lot of fun. And one of the things I told him was that when we decided we were going to get married was that there was one ultimate authority in our household, and that was a loving God as I explained it to him, you know. And occasionally, I'm not sorry to say, occasionally I pulled rank on him. So anyway, like I said, we had Joe sponsored a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous, And I sponsored a lot of people, and the doors swang and in and out. But the best present that either one of us received was about 9 years ago. My darling niece came to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Joe and I had the pleasure of taking her to her first meeting. And I have had the pleasure of giving her every birthday chip since then. She came to live with us in September before Joe died in November. I had the pleasure of taking her to her first meeting. And I have had the pleasure of giving her every birthday chip since then. She came to live with us in September before Joe died in November. And we made a home. And as you know, Penny got a divorce in September, and you know, all know who knew her, know that Glennie committed suicide in November. So we lost two darling men in less than 2 months. And it was a really hard time for us. But you see this program work. We knew exactly what to do. The first Christmas that Joe and Glennie were gone, we first talked about going to New Orleans for Christmas, and we talked about going other places, and then we decided, no, that was not what we were going to do. You know, there are an awful lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous that have no one. So we started our tradition. We cooked for the bachelors. There's just a whole bunch of sorry old boys in Alcoholics Anonymous, and gals too, that don't have anybody. They don't have families, don't have anything. So we decorate the house, we put up Christmas trees, we bake turkeys, we bake pies, we have an AA meeting at the house, and we celebrate Christmas, which was absolutely wonderful, and it's become a tradition. I don't know how we're going to do it between Broken Bow and Kentucky, but we'll figure out a way to do it. And so that was a salvation. And then we began to go to meetings. The one place I could not be was in my house. Because you see, 2 years before Joe died, he was in hospice and he died at home. And the house was empty. So every night we went to a meeting somewhere, or we went to a convention, or we got involved, and we become the volunteeringest fools you've ever seen. I want you to know I'm a citizen in my community today, and that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. You know, I'm president of the Historical Society, and I'm vice president of the Art Guild, and I'm a member in good standing of the Rose and Garden, and I'm very proud of those things. It was funny, I didn't realize how much those titles meant to me, and that's the end of my story, and I'll tell you that. Well, anyway, so we were just junking along. We're going to Florida, and we're going to conventions, and we're just having a wonderful time and healing. And, we think we've got our lives all figured out again. I had it all figured out again. I had it absolutely figured out again. I'm just going to do this. This is going to be nice. And I thought, well, I'm going to buy a condo in Florida. And I'm going to go to Florida about 3 or 4 months out of the year because I have a friend that lives on Sanibel who's in the program, and she goes down for the winter. And I thought, I know a lot of people in Florida now. I'll just go down there, and I'll come home, and I'll do my thing and the whole thing. Well, I'm a member of good standing of my home group, which is the Grand Rivers 12 Steppers. And Penny and I had been off on some jaunt somewhere. I don't know exactly where we've been, but we've been gone for about a month and a half, and we hadn't been to that particular meeting. And so I walked in that meeting on a Wednesday night, and we were all sitting there, and this meeting is crazy. There's a lot of sobriety sits around those tables. And it's just really, and when the moon is full, I don't know what happens, but we just get really goofy. You know, our elder statesman puts the basket on his head, and, they raise hell about if you don't bring the cookies, and, And so that night we were sitting there, and in lumbered this great, huge mountain of a man. And I said to myself, I don't know who he is, but he's not from here. I'll have to see about this. But they all seemed to know who he was. So after the meeting, I walked up and introduced myself, and he found out that he was relatively new to the area. He'd lived in the area for quite a while, but he was new to this meeting. And I told him about the convention that was going on that weekend, and he didn't know much about it, but he thought maybe he might go. Well, he showed up, and I decided he ought to be mine. There's a little resistance there, but you know. And so anyway, we started doing a little dating, and the next thing you know, we were full-blown crazy. You all know about full-blown crazy, don't you? You know. Well, we're in full-blown crazy. I'm selling my house and everything in it. And Flynn and I are he's got another year to go before he retires, and we're buying a vessel, and we're going to sail. He is a pilot. He was a pilot for Mobil Oil for 25 years, and he's retired. He's a riverman. And as we speak, he's probably on some boat going to Memphis. I'm starting my life all over. Now, most of the people who know me think I'm absolutely crazy. But you see, this program will give you the courage to do anything you got to do. Now, those antiques that I have moved all over the United States don't mean anything to me anymore. They're just furniture. That was another life. And that beautiful Victorian house I lived in that I've worked on for 14 years, it's just a house. It's time for me to move on. And I'm even selling Penny's house up from under her. So she's got to come back broken bones. And you know what is absolutely wonderful is that, you know, there is absolutely no waste in God's economy. Things come to us whenever we are ready to receive them. I honestly believe if I had drank one more drink, I might not have gotten sober. I don't know, if I'd have waited one more day, I might not have got sober. The higher power of my understanding is in absolute control of my life, and he gets me ready for everything that is going to happen next. And I never know when it's happening. And I know it hadn't been 3 months ago. I was sitting up in Penny's apartment, and I said, I hate my damn life. Now, you see, I am addicted to drama and excitement. That has not left me in all my years of sobriety. I still want to be there where it's happening. You know, I just can't stand nothing happening. And I have learned this about myself. I need to be where something's happening. That's why I'm a DCM, an alternate DCM. That's why I go to assemblies. By God, there's always something happening there. I'll tell you, that is one exciting place. You know, and in service with crazy people because there's something happening. You know, I see these people. We have people in my home group that never go to any other meeting. You couldn't blast them to a convention if your life depended on it. And they sit there with these faces about this long and they say, is this all there is to sobriety? And I said, that's all you're getting. You keep on doing what you're doing, you're going to keep on getting what you'll get, I guarantee you. So I'm addicted to this drama and this excitement. I understand this, and I will create it in a negative way if I don't keep it in my life in a positive way. And one of the ways I do that is I stay involved with Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I don't know if I can stay sober without this program. but I'm sure not going to try it, because an alcoholic is the only person I know that will quit doing what works. And I just love it when I'm sitting in a meeting somewhere, and I go to probably on an average of 5 meetings a week. Now, I don't go there necessarily because, I don't know which meeting I need, so I just go. And besides that, I love the fellowship, and I love the drunks. So I just go to lots of meetings, and I'll see somebody say, well, I just had too much AA. I'm getting too much AA. And You keep on getting too much AA, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You get too much liquor. We got a guy that comes in, and he's been keeping me sober for years. This is the cutest little guy you ever saw. I just love him to death. He's had 5 DUIs, and he cannot understand that he has a problem with alcohol. And I just love little Frankie. He comes in there just beat up, just dang me. They ought to get a rope and hang him. And just beat up. He dumb. He just can't believe how dumb he is. He's done it again and the whole thing. And I said, I walked over to Jim the last time he came back, and I said, Frankie, if I was you, I'd give your job back. And he said, what job? And I said, the one keeping me sober. I said, this damn near going to kill you. I said, every time you come in here, I think, my God, I'm glad I didn't have to go and drink. Frankie did it for me. I said, you better give it to somebody else. He's going to kill you. And he just looks at me like he doesn't know what I'm talking about. He hadn't got a clue. He has not got a clue. You see, this man thinks that his problem is alcohol. He does not understand that his problem, as my problem, is alcoholism. That's why I can't learn enough about this disease to stay sober. Because it is a threefold disease. I have a mental quirk, a spiritual illness, and a physical addiction to alcohol. And I have a professional forgetter. It says in my big book, as clear as a bell, at the bottom of chapter 3, there will come a time when I will have no mental defense against picking up my next drink. Now that tells me I can't learn enough. It tells me that, and it goes on to say that the only thing that I have is a daily spiritual reprieve, based on. And I believe that. That was burned into my conscience by these beautiful people who have gone before me in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I have always had a sponsor. I have a sponsor today who is one courageous lady. My Jenny is in the latter stages of emphysema, and she's not able to get to very many meetings. When I moved to Western Kentucky, there was a lady named Louise H., and Louise is an amputee, and she lost her leg when she was 8 years sober. An automobile fell on her. This is the most courageous lady I have ever seen in my life. She was in the hospital for 2 years, and her body is completely rebuilt. And she gets out on the floor and dance floor. She was here tonight. She'd be out on the dance floor dancing with one leg. She has more courage than anybody I've ever seen. When she left the hospital, she was a morphine addict. Because she laid with every bone in her body broken for months before they could start setting them. And then they had to re-break them in order to reset her bones. And of course, all that time she was on morphine. So she left the hospital a morphine addict, which was her secondary addiction. She's a very courageous lady, and I spend a lot of time with her. And she's taught me what courage is about. But the one person who, more than anybody else in my life, who taught me the dignity of recovery was my late husband, Joe. If you had walked into our home 3 days before he died, he was on 15 liters of oxygen. Thank God he was not in pain. And he couldn't remember what he had for lunch because of oxygen deprivation. If you'd have walked in there, he'd have said, "Hello, pal. How you doing today?" And he would have told you all about Alcoholics Anonymous. And he would have told you that there ain't no bad way to stay sober, and there ain't no good way to stay drunk. And that was his bylaw. And you know where he learned that from? He learned it from a little guy about this high in Kingston Springs named Jack Cole, who was his sponsor, who died at home with leukemia. And who, the day before he died, had all of the people he loved in Alcoholics Anonymous come to him and say, what can I do for you today? What can I do for you today? And those are the people who are my mentors in this program, because that's what this program is all about. You see, we talk about it all the time. You've got to give it away to keep it. But I have to. If I want the full benefit of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I got to be here. And I got to try to give it away. And I love all these beautiful young women who are here. They don't know how beautiful they are. And they don't know how beautiful they're going to be. They don't have the clue how beautiful they're going to be. Because that beauty comes from in here. It comes from in here. And it's called the Spirit Glow. I firmly believe that inside of every alcoholic, no matter where we have been, no matter what degradation that our disease has taken us to, that there is not one little patch of white velvet that we call our soul and that we call our spirit that is totally untouched by the ravages of this disease. And that is the part of us that is valuable. That is the part of us that Alcoholics Anonymous can touch and bring to full flower. And it costs absolutely nothing except total dedication to the idea that there before the grace of God go I. There is not one person I know that cannot recover in this program if they choose to. You cannot give this program to anybody because God knows I have watched my friends die in this program. I have one little girl that I sponsor that I would have sold my soul to give her this program, and she just can't make it. But I want to tell you something. I don't ever give up on anybody, but God don't ever give up on us. And I have sat in the emergency rooms with this little girl watching her get her stomach pumped. And if her husband called me tonight and said, you got to go to the hospital, Annie's drunk again, and she took an overdose, and I'm afraid she's going to die this time, we'd drive all night, and I'd be there. You see, I don't give up on her, because I don't know when you give up on an alcoholic. Because you people never, ever gave up on me. And you put up with some really bad behavior. Some really bad behavior. I'll tell you about one little thing I did, and my sponsor just about snatched me bald-headed for it. But we used to have this meeting on Tuesday, and it was, and I had about 3 years sobriety. And you know how we are when we're 3 years sober? We know every damn thing there is to know. And it hurts our feelings when people sit around and talk about how if you don't really have any sobriety, you're 5 or 6 years sober, and then you might have a glimpse. But you know, when you're 3, you know everything. And boy, did I know everything. I could quote you anything in this book. Didn't understand a damn bit of it, but I could quote it. And I'm in this meeting one day, and there's these 2 little old gals, and one of them was chairing the meeting, and I didn't think she knew what she was talking about. And they were kind of co-chairing the meeting. They were kind of going back and forth. And it started out up there at the beginning, and, it was one of those we'll fix it meetings. And one of them was talking about something, a problem she's having with her child. And then pretty soon this one was giving advice, and this one was giving advice, and was going to do all that cross-talk and all that. And, and I decided they weren't doing it right. And I was sitting on the back row, and I had a tray beside me with a coffee cup sitting on that metal tray. And I said, I've had all this damn fun I can stand. And I hit that tray, that coffee cup went on. I said, I'm taking over this meeting. I came here for a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what I'm chairing this meeting from here on. And we're going to talk about third step. And I thought it was kind of a neat thing to do until I told my sponsor. And she reminded me there was but one ultimate authority, and she also told me one other thing. If I started going to meetings that I didn't like, Get the hell out of that meeting and let them run it the way they want to. Go find you one you do like. But she also told me one other thing. She said, if you go into meetings and you don't like any of them, there's something wrong with you. It's not the meetings. You better look inside. And but if you're going to a meeting that consistently you leave and you don't feel better than when you go find another meeting. It's not your meeting. And she also told me that as I grew in this program, that I was responsible for the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I knew that a tradition was being stepped on or when something was happening, I was to speak up. This was not a popularity contest. This was not about being popular. It was not about being liked. It was about saving people's lives. And that I was to speak up. And once I had spoken, and then at the group, conscience said, this is the way we're going to run our meeting, then go somewhere else. But I was charged with the responsibility of doing what I knew was the right thing. I've been very well sponsored. If there's anybody who is trying to stay sober one day at a time who doesn't have a sponsor, you're doing it the hard way. And the analogy that I give is the analogy that was given to me. If I was going to California and I did not know how to get there, had not the foggiest idea how to get there, I would not probably start out on my own unless I was drunk. I would go to somebody who I knew had been to California, who had a little bit of understanding about the road map and how to get there, and I would ask them to show me how to be there. Well, that's what I did in Alcoholics Anonymous. I looked around these tables, and I found people who were sober like I wanted to be sober, who had what I wanted in my life. For a long time, I emulated my sponsor's personality, and that was good enough at the time. But what I really wanted was my sponsor's sobriety. I wanted to be sober like that woman was sober. I wanted to be an accountable human being. You see, all I ever really wanted to be was a halfway decent human being who lived life on life's terms and wore it like a loose garment. And I did not know how to do that until I got mixed up with a bunch of disease-sick, crazy people who taught me how to do it, and they don't even know how to do it. Now, if that isn't a miracle, you tell me. You tell me. There isn't one of us know how to live life. But we can do it. We can do it. We can do anything. And my first higher power was the magic that happens in a room full of drunks. That was higher power enough for me. The magic that happens when a bunch of drunks get together and stay sober one day at a time. And how we care, we are without a doubt the rudest and most impolite and awful people when we're drinking that you've ever seen. And yet you all have sat here and listened to every word I said tonight. You gave me your full attention. Now, if you don't think Alcoholics Anonymous changes people, look at yourself. If you don't believe this program works, look at yourself. And if you're new, stay. I'm not going to tell you that if you don't drink, you go to meetings, things are going to get better. They probably won't. When you get better, they'll get better. Hang through the meantime, because you ain't got any place else to go if you're like me. When I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, I had not one more place to go. This was it. This was the end of the road. I had tried everything else. And I'm, like I said, I'm at this point in my life, once fixed, never needs adjustment. I was absolutely certain that was where I was in my life again. And then I ran into this man who's got the same amount, got a year more sobriety than I got. He's crazier than I am. And we are as crazy as two bullbats. And then we're just talking about going off and doing all this wonderful stuff, and we're probably going to do that. And I'm giving up security and everything else in order just to go love and have fun. And we're probably going to get married in the next couple of weeks, and off on a new adventure. And I have no idea where this is going to end, but I just think it's absolutely wonderful. And I never planned this because, you see, I thought my life was going to be the way I thought it was going to be. So we never know what is going to happen next. But I know one thing. I want to be able to stand up to the bat and take it. And I want to thank you all for listening to me. I want to thank you for inviting me. I always love to come here, and this was a special treat to me because I've been here enough that I had faces that I looked for, and people that I looked for, and conversations that I remembered from the last time I was here. And I was so happy to see how many of you are still here, you know, still carrying the message, still trudging the happy road to destiny. Thank you so much.